Will the budget reduce taxes? Now, there is no doubt that the government has to be liberal on taxes in the coming union budget on February 1st, particularly if it has to increase purchasing power in the hands of the middle class, which has been facing income stress and rising inflation. Uday Ved, partner tax services at KNAV CPA in India and former KPMG veteran, says the expectations on the finance minister are high, not just for reducing taxes on individuals, but for boosting manufacturing and thus creating jobs. He argues that the highest slab of 30% tax should be now beyond the taxable income of 50 lakh rupees per year, which will lead to increased disposable income and also increased consumption in an economy that's seeing a slowdown. I reached out to him and began by asking him to describe how the manufacturing sector could benefit from a tax boost and what that specifically could be.
The Union Budget 2025-26. This is the first full year of the budget after the elections were over last year, right? And the government now has full 4 or 5 years term together to make an impact. India traditionally has been a service-driven economy, and last 8 or 10 years giving more focus on the manufacturing. Very, very important to make India a manufacturing hub in terms of what's happening globally. And India can only benefit from that. So, if one looks at it in 2019, the tax rate, corporate tax rate for the new manufacturing units was reduced from 25 to 15%, with surcharge about 17%. And there was always a sunset or a deadline by which you should start manufacturing. And last year, exactly this time, it was, of course, interim budget just before the election. When we are talking, the deadline was to start manufacturing by March 31, 2024 at that point of time, if you want to avail that concessional rate of 15% or 17% with surcharge. And it didn't get naturally no change in the interim budget. Nobody was expecting it, but certainly there was some expectation when the new government took over and on July 23rd, 2024, we had a budget. We didn't get that extension. So as it stands today, only if one had started manufacturing by last year, March 31, 2024, then that concessional rate of 15% is available. I would believe that there is clearly an ask in this budget to extend that manufacturing deadline, because a lot of people would have put in manufacturing plants, started doing it. There's always asked, are Indian corporates, promoters investing in capital intensive new manufacturing units? They already started it, but they may not have completed rather the production by March 31, 2024. Certainly, it would be an ask not to change the rate. The rate would be 15% is okay, absolutely fine, very competitive globally, but certainly extend the deadline to not only March 31, 2025, because there will be only 3 months left, but possibly extend it up to March 31, 2026. I think that would be the first ask. And that's very easy because that will really give boost to the manufacturing. And coupled with PLI scheme, which has been successful in few sectors, it will help a lot in terms of, people trying to put the projects completing and new projects also to be put into place. I think that would be the first task which will give boost to manufacturing, as you rightly maybe put in, that it also creates a lot of job creation because of the manufacturing. There is also an associated provision in the law, which is more theoretical in my mind, to say that if you increase the job by an X number of people, then on additional you should, you get 30% under 80 JJA of the additional cost that was incurred. Now that is more theoretical, make it more practical to achieve that. So coupled with the manufacturing, job creation and incentive related to that may be introduced in this budget.
Right. Okay. So let me pick up on a couple of tax administration issues now. So linked to all of this, obviously, is the fact that most entrepreneurs, businesses, industries would want more efficient tax administration. And there are several aspects which are top of mind, including around litigation. What are your key asks there?
So clearly there is something called, I've said it for many, many years, something called policy and something called implementation or administration. It's always the gap in implementation. Things have improved a lot, but still there is a lot which can be done. What investors want is a certainty. Certainly foreign investors who want to invest in India, foreign capital is quite welcome. They want certainty more than the reduction in tax rate sometimes, many times I would say. And in that situation, there are a couple of things which can be done. This is not a new ask, an extension of what's going on for last few years, an ongoing thing. But like last year's budget did some rationalization on the capital gains tax. Now this time it could be a TDS, the tax deducted as source, which is really quite a painful process, particularly for the resident corporate taxpayers. When one resident pays to another, I think the tax liability is always determined, right? And TDS has been used more as a advanced tax collection more than the mechanism. So TDS restoration should be on the top priority. Maybe there are so many 25, 30 kind of provisions or more than that, which are different rates. And that can be just rationalized to make it one for the salary, which is okay, which is going on based on the compensation received, but all other TDS payments like technical fees, professional fees, contractors, that can be just one rate, and which has been the ask by many people. It's not a new ask by me. Like say 5% rate should be done. And within that, even within resident, there is no sense for having TDS, I would say. Okay, only for the non-resident you try and keep it because the money is going out of the country. And one more part, I would say there is also TDS in certain situations, there is TCS on e-commerce transactions. That has really not served any purpose, and tracking has been there with other laws. So TDS and TCS should not exist together. 194R is another provision which has created so much furor in last 2 or 3 years since it was introduced, right? That the free perquisite or concessional perquisite which has been given to directors and promoters. Then FAQs which have created more confusion and problem. So TDS and TCS you clearly don't need it in my view. TDS should be one rate, I would say. That really will help rationalization. It will add to a less compliance, which is the need of the hour today. And I don't think there is going to be any, in terms of the tax collection is going to be impacted. Because corporates will always pay the tax with or without TDS.
Right. Let's come to the common man, and you're arguing for higher exemption limit. And do you feel that's more from an administration point of view, or more in terms of putting more, let's say, purchasing power in the hands of people?
No, clearly putting more money in the hands of a common man, the salaried class, the SME businessman, and everyone, I would say. The tax rate, I think the new tax regime which has been introduced is working well, I would say. But there are 8 crore filers today. There are hardly 1.5 crore people who are paying tax. More than 1 crore will be even less than a lakh of people, I would say. Very less. So more in terms of extending the slab rates, maybe a better way of putting more money. Like 30% slab rate comes at 15 lakhs or something like that. Make it, maybe 25 lakhs, or I would say 50 lakhs. But that would really put more money in the hands of common men, professional, SME businessmen. Average 15 to 20% tax rate in the hands of individual is a good rate. And collect it, which you have been doing it from high net worth individuals. You have a tax rate all the way going up to 39%. Collect it from there. That is one ask, putting more money. And second, which is across everything, we have basic rate, which is 10, 20, 30, or even for corporate 22. And then there is surcharge. Now that surcharge, honestly, the whole objective of surcharge is to be introduced in some emergency situation where there is a natural calamity or something. It started some very few decades back, and that has become part of the tax. So if you say, what is the tax rate? 30%. No, tax rate, even the highest rate is not 30. It goes all the way up to 39 with surcharge, which is, I think, very high. And I would believe that surcharge should be removed totally. Again, this has been asked to what extent it is feasible from a collection perspective. One has to see. Last point I will make it that if you are in a treaty situation, because treaty puts a rate on that's more for corporates. When say a payment for royalty or FTS, fees for technical services made, say the tax rate is 15%, there is no surcharge there. When you're making a payment to a non-resident in a treaty situation, why do we need surcharge? Just remove surcharge, I would believe so. I think that certainty would add money to the common man. Then in addition, there could be other asks in terms of give some deduction for the housing, that will interest deduction, which has been there for a number of years, even in the new regime. So I think those are some of the things, but slab rate expansion would be, I think, one of the key asks, which will really add money into the common man. Most of the money is going to be spent in the economy. It will come back.
Right. Uday, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Always a pleasure.